A Chinese casino is suspected of money laundering, corruption, and immigration violations in a U.S. territory. Strangely, the FBI has just closed their investigation. And the governor who begged them to investigate, well, he just died suddenly. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Remember to watch this episode to the end and leave a honeypot comment below to beat YouTube's algorithm. So, what if I told you that the Chinese Communist Party is already invading the United States? A strategically crucial part of the United States. This is the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or CNMI for short, and it's a U.S. territory. How many of you learned about this in school? Me neither. Personally, I blame Rand McNally. Hey Rand, this is not a map of the entire United States. Miss Thornycroft showed my classroom a map of lies. Lies! Okay, back to CNMI. Notice that it's the closest U.S. territory to China. It's also right above Guam, which has a couple of U.S. military bases. Both of those things are important. The largest island in CNMI is Saipan. You may have heard of it because one of the biggest battles of World War II in the Pacific was the Battle of Saipan. The U.S. Department of Defense is currently pumping $800 million into CNMI to upgrade its military facilities, because in a war with China over Taiwan, this place would be, let's say, pretty relevant. And the Chinese Communist Party knows that, which means the CCP's political warfare in CNMI is off the charts. Political warfare is how the CCP conquers a place without firing a single shot. For years, CNMI's governor, Arnold Palacios, had tried to root out corruption, some of which is tied to CCP influence operations and Chinese money. Most recently, in April 2025, he sent a letter calling for an investigation, saying he had considerable evidence to provide directly to the FBI. The governor also repeatedly asked the federal government for help auditing CNMI's government, including figuring out where over $1 billion of COVID relief money had gone. This man was asking for more accountants. He was asking to be audited by the government. That didn't make him the most popular guy.
You know, sometimes maybe I'll just fold my tent and raise my hand and say, okay, maybe I got it wrong. Because sometimes I feel like I'm just a John the Baptist out in the desert. Seriously, that's how lonely it has been for the past 9 to 10 months.
Governor Palasios was also trying to end CNMI's economic over-reliance on Chinese money. That didn't make him the most popular guy with the CCP either. Governor Palasios was the only outspoken CNMI official standing up to CCP influence and public corruption. And he died, suddenly, last week. Which means now is the critical time to launch an investigation before evidence can be hidden or destroyed. So how bad are things in CNMI? Let's talk about money laundering. This is Sui Lijie. Yeah, you can already tell the story is going to be good just from that hat. This is her son, Ji Xiaobo. Sui and Ji made money in real estate and pawn shops in northern China. Then they moved down to Macau and became junket operators. Junkets are how China's filthy rich use Macau's casinos to launder their money. Then, in 2014, the CCP started cracking down on junket operators. But that's okay, because Sui and her son had already set their sights on Saipan, on U.S. soil. Casinos were illegal in Saipan until lawmakers fast-tracked and passed a casino bill in 2014. Remember, the same time China was cracking down on junkets in Macau. And this is after 3 previous casino bills had been defeated. So what changed? Well, lawmakers were taken on a fact-finding mission to Macau and saw just how great casinos were. And that trip was arranged and paid for by a company tied to Ji Xiaobo. His mom, Sui Lijie, then won the only casino license on Saipan through a company eventually named Imperial Palace International. According to Forbes, critics of the casino bill thought the bill was designed for Imperial Palace International from the start. As part of the license, Imperial Palace was required to build a casino with 2,000 hotel rooms and pay $30 million in gaming taxes up front. But Imperial Palace wanted to start a casino ASAP. They didn't want to wait to build a casino with 2,000 hotel rooms. So in 2015, they opened a temporary casino in a duty-free mall on Saipan. It was the size of a suburban Olive Garden. But instead of unlimited breadsticks, it was unlimited suspicious financial activity. In just 3 months, this cozy little casino reported $5.3 billion in VIP bets, with fewer than 20 VIP tables. Soon, it was doing over $2 billion in VIP bets a month. By the first half of 2017, it was turning over nearly 6 times more cash, table for table, than Macau casinos. Yeah, a casino the size of an Olive Garden was doing better than Macau casinos, which dwarf the ones in Vegas. And remember, Macau is a notorious money laundering hub. Bloomberg News interviewed a bunch of casino executives who all said there was no way Imperial Palace was generating these volumes legitimately. In fact, one of the executives burst out laughing. I mean, if the story doesn't make you laugh, it'll make you cry. Imperial Palace did a bunch of other sketchy things in Saipan, like paying millions of dollars in land leases to the family members of the then governor. Let me remind you, this is all happening on U.S. soil. And let's talk about who was linked to Imperial Palace. It was paying 3 former U.S. governors and a former FBI director as advisors. And it also had a retired military judge and a former CIA director on its board of directors. Which really raises the question, did anyone not get paid by this casino? Hey, want to see this picture I found of Sway Lee J and President Obama? Okay, I'm not saying that President Obama was involved in the casino, but at some point in 2016, several executives of Imperial Palace, including Tsui, visited the U.S. mainland and somehow met with President Obama. It's not clear why, but it gives you a sense of how Imperial Palace was able to tap into the top levels of American society. Shaking hands with the U.S. president is pretty good for business. Okay, back to the shady stuff. Remember that huge casino Imperial Palace was supposed to build? Well, they did build it with shoddy construction, shoddy, tasteless construction, and with undocumented Chinese workers who were getting constantly injured due to lax safety standards. But it wasn't until a worker fell to his death that the FBI started looking into Imperial Palace. How did those Chinese workers get to Saipan? Well, CNMI is the only place in the U.S. where Chinese nationals can enter without a visa. Under this visa waiver program, they are only supposed to stay for 14 days and they're not supposed to leave CNMI. It's all supposed to promote Chinese tourism to CNMI. But FBI raids on Imperial Palace found that hundreds of Chinese had overstayed and were illegally working construction. Okay, let's pause on the casino story for a minute so we can talk about how insane it is that Chinese citizens can just enter the U.S. without a visa. This has caused all sorts of problems, like Chinese citizens illegally getting U.S. driver's licenses. In 2023, the head of CNMI's Bureau of Motor Vehicles was sentenced to 5 years in prison for providing these driver's licenses. She charged $1,700 for a new license and $300 for a renewal. And I bet those Chinese nationals didn't even have to wait in line. And despite not being allowed to leave CNMI, hundreds of Chinese without visas have been traveling to Guam. Last year, 7 Chinese nationals were arrested trying to illegally enter Guam during U.S. missile testing. 4 of them were near a military base. Okay. The frustrating thing here is that the Imperial Palace story is so bad that I don't even have time to tell you about all the other really bad stuff the CCP is doing. Like about this guy, Ye Fang, who was arrested in CMI for trying to smuggle in liquid meth disguised in lava lamps. In addition to his drug smuggling network, he also had a birth tourism business bringing Chinese women to Saipan to have anchor babies. They'd be U.S. citizens. And he was also arrested for murder in the Pacific island of Palau. Yeah, the meth smuggling, human trafficking, possible murderer is the less bad story here. Despite the clear threat to U.S. national security, the U.S. government seems to have barely scratched the surface of the CCP's political warfare in CNMI. Do you think we should maybe stop letting Chinese nationals come into America without visas? Okay, back to Imperial Palace. In 2019, the FBI raided the former governor's office and Imperial Palace during an investigation into money laundering and wire fraud from foreign entities. During that investigation, the FBI did file a civil forfeiture complaint against a different company, Mariana's Consultancy Services, which was a consultant for Imperial Palace. But they never filed anything against Imperial Palace or the former governor. And just a few weeks ago, the FBI confirmed they are closing that investigation. May I remind you that Imperial Palace had a former FBI director as an advisor and a former CIA director on its board of directors? Meanwhile, Imperial Palace had closed during COVID and declared bankruptcy last year. But that doesn't mean the story's over, because the company that's trying to buy Imperial Palace's assets and its casino license in CNMI, Team King Investments, is closely linked to the owners of Imperial Palace. It's like the Corleones declared bankruptcy and sold their olive oil company to their cousins. Like I said earlier, Governor Palasios was pretty much the only official in CNMI speaking out against CCP influence and trying to stop the territory's dependence on Chinese money. Meanwhile, CNMI's congressional representative, Kimberlyn King-Hines, is lobbying for more Chinese tourism, more direct flights from mainland China, and keeping the visa waiver program going strong, because it's worked really well so far. And she's doing that despite the fact that Chinese tourism hasn't recovered since COVID. And most tourists to CNMI are now from South Korea, not China. There are still people in CNMI who are trying to stop CCP political warfare. But after the sudden death of Governor Palasios, they're scared. And the window for a transparent investigation into what's happening in CNMI is rapidly closing. If CNMI falls to political warfare, this isn't just about an island chain in the Pacific. It's about the CCP landing a beachhead inside U.S. territory. If you're an American who's concerned about what's happening in CNMI, call your congressperson and ask them to close the visa waiver program that allows Chinese citizens to enter the U.S. without visas in the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. There are already people in Congress seeking to end the visa waiver program. It's time to stop playing roulette with U.S. national security. If you're interested in this topic, click this button. We just did a special China Unscripted podcast with Cleo Pascal on CNMI. And because of the urgency of this issue, we're removing the paywall for this podcast for a limited time. So check it out at ChinaUncensored.tv. Link is below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thank you for watching China Uncensored.